Namaskar, everyone. So welcome on behalf of the BIC. I'm really happy to have the marvelous writer Vasudhendra on stage with us. And with him, his translator, Maithreyi Karnoor, who translated his latest historical novel, Tejo Tungabhadra, into English, from Kannada into English, and Devi Yesodharan, who is going to moderate the session. Now, before I go any further, I have just wanted to say, I'm going to ask a couple of questions and put your hands up if the answer is yes. And my question is, have you read Vasudhendra in Kannada? Have you read Vasudhendra translated into English? Have you heard of Vasudhendra? So keep your hands up. Let's have a show of hands. Have you heard of Vasudhendra, read about him in the media? Have you heard of his publishing house, Chanda Pustaka? So I think exactly. So I think, usually when you have an important personage on stage, you say, so now you can relax. You say, he needs no introduction, or they need no introduction. And in this case, it's pretty much true. Everybody knows who Vasudhendra is. However, I do want to remind you that the formal bios are on the website and available on the BIC website and available in many places. So if you want to check which awards he won, the Karnataka Sahitya Academy Award, the U.R. Ananthamurthy Award, all his list of publications, you can check the website. And everything is there. And I'll come back to Vasudhendra in a minute. I do want to thank Maithreyi also for being here, his translator. I think translation is one of those extraordinary things which is deeply altruistic in some way. It's a giving and a receiving. And I always appreciate so much that somebody invests their literary skills in entering somebody else's work and weaving in their literary path into the fabric of another work. So I'm always very grateful to the opportunity for me to be able to read Tejo Tungabhadra in English and hopefully soon in Kannada. And so thank you, Maithreyi, for being here. And I'm really excited that you could join us as well. And moderating the session in conversation with Vasudhendra and Maithreyi is Devi Yesodharan. Now, Devi is multifaceted, all kinds of fantastic talents, but the reason she's here today is that she too is a historical fiction writer from Bangalore, in a sense, living in Bangalore. Her book Empire is set in the time of Rajendra Chola, and the thing that I have to say about having Devi in this conversation is that when she and I were having a little chat about, the path of today's session, I really felt, wow, having a historical fiction writer in conversation is important, because she just took she's not viewing the questions or the investigation into this book just as a reader or just as a writer, but as a historical fiction writer. And so the questions were things that I might not have even really thought of investigating. So thank you, Devi, for being here. And I do want to say just a couple more things. I am an editor of a short fiction magazine called Out of Print. It's an online magazine that publishes in English and translated into English. So my first encounter with Vasudhendra was in 2015, when we published his story that was going to go into the collection, the English collection, published by HarperCollins, that's called Mohanaswamy, and which of course has won much accolade, and everyone is well aware of it. And I think it was just fantastic because, Vasudhendra is known to be the first openly gay homosexual writer in Kannada. And, this story is very much about that experience, the story that we published in Out of Print called Bedbug. And we published it in a special issue that came out on sexual and gender violence. And since then, I have to say, two two things. One is I've discovered Vasudhendra's writing in Kannada as well, thanks to the introduction to Dadapet Jaiman, who's my patient and kind tutor, helping me through going past 7th standard Kannada to reading literature. And I was struck by how amazingly profoundly honest, in a way. The lens through which Vasudhendra reveals his characters has a kind of level of honesty that comes from, I think, lived experience, comes from the familiar, but is yet fiction, and it's just extraordinary writing. And for me, really was the explicitness, both emotionally, sexually, socially. It's just extraordinary. So thank you so much. Therefore, I thank you first for your generosity to Outer Print and always enthusiastically supporting it. But also, I'm so curious now, when you're taking fiction from kind of lived experience to now displacing it in historical fiction, and I'm just really curious about this session, how you will talk about transforming that experience into another time, a space, a social fabric. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome again on behalf of the BIC, and over to you.
Namaskara. Good morning, everyone. So I'll be speaking both in Kannada and English, okay? So because many of them have come for my Kannada readers, so I would like to switch over between both language. Kannadallu ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಮೊದಲಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಸೊ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್ ಟು ಎವ್ರಿವನ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಕಮ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಆಲ್ ಓವರ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ, ಮೆನಿ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಚಿಕ್ಕಮಗಳೂರು, ಮೆನಿ ಫ್ರಮ್ ರಾಯಚೂರ್, ಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದೆಮ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಕಮ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಗುಲ್ಬರ್ಗಾ, ಸಮ್ ಆಫ್ ದೆಮ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಕಮ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಮೈಸೂರು, ಸೊ ಮಂಡ್ಯ. ಸೊ ಐ ಆಮ್ ವೆರಿ ವೆರಿ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಫುಲ್ ಟು ಆಲ್ ದ invitees who have come here all the way. So that's to start. But generally we start, the book opening session will be there for the book launch. Instead of that, we are going to showcase a video. That video will be the launch of our book. Okay, so we'll have the video and then we'll take it forward. That wonderful video has been done by Guru Charan, but Guru Charan has come for the event. Where is Guru? Yeah. Thanks, Guru. Guru, he has recently passed out from Christ College, actually just 1.5 years back, and he has done this wonderful video, astonishing video, in a very short duration without taking much time. So thanks to Guru Charan. Now I'll hand it over to Devi.
So, Vasudhendra, this book, Tejo Tungabhadra, spans approximately 25 years, from 1492 to 1518. And there is a very key event here where Vasco da Gama discovers India. And that particular event sort of changes the future of a lot of the key characters in this book, right? Now, unfortunately, I'm a Malayalis and my Kannada is like really basic. So I read the book in translation. And there is obviously an unavoidable shift in tone that happens, when a book is translated from one language to another. But I really enjoyed the story. I thought it had a lot of momentum. And you have that unusual skill of, making characters sympathetic to the reader, no matter, how good or evil they are. And I thought that was, you understand their motivations even if you don't like them. So my first question is actually around the beginning of the book. Rather than put us in familiar territory, you place us in Portugal, right, next to the people near the Tejo River. And you're immediately in the middle of the dynamics of the spice trade and, the Jewish refugees and so on. And I thought it was an interesting choice to begin there rather than, near the Tungabhadra. So why did you do that? Why did you start the book there?
Very interesting question, actually. See, the reason why I wrote this book itself is interesting. See, as Indira pointed out very accurately, I was always writing my works based on my experiences. I was very afraid to take up anything which is out of my experience world. Okay. But I thought I am putting unnecessary constraint for my own imagination. And also after I wrote Mohanaswamy, that being a gay and LGBT related issue, which got translated to English, everywhere, wherever I go for Lit Fest, wherever I go, I've been called for LGBT session and not anything related with the literature session. So that's how it was. I was, these things, I said, like, I'm much bigger than this actually. So I had written already 12 to 13 books before writing Mohanaswamy. So now I decided I should choose a subject where I am not there. I should not be there at all. So then I thought history is the best place where I can go. And I come from a place where Hampi is very nearby. It's hardly 10 to 15 kilometers from my place to Hampi. So I said, Vijayanagara history, let me start. But it's so interesting. Once I started reading the history, more than Vijayanagara, I was fascinated by Lisbon. The kind of turbulence which is taken in the Lisbon because of India. We always talk about the impact of Portuguese people coming to India. We always talk about that. But not that because Vasco da Gama found out a route for India, it had lot of impact on the Lisbon. The reverse impact was there. Though without our knowledge, there was a lot of impact. That was very fascinating for me. So I said that I had to start from there, actually. So I was very afraid, how can I write a place where I have not even gone? So Lisbon, I have not even gone and I have not even seen. I lived in Europe. So I worked in England for quite a few years. So I thought that experience is there. But Lisbon, I really don't know what it is like, how people are and all. But I said there's no limit. Like, imagination is always the key for the fiction writing. I should not be constrained by this reality word, so I should not be constrained. So I read a lot. I didn't just start writing it without reading or studying the subject. I went to the anthropology. Quite a lot of anthropology is related to Spanish as well as Portuguese and the Lisbon word.
Okay, I do have a question related to what you're saying. You actually place this during a time of discovery, right? Where three major things are happening. One is the discovery of India. Second is the rise of the printing press. Third is the Jewish refugees coming in from Spain. And then you also talk a lot about Portuguese colonialism, right? The very harrowing detail about what they did in Asia and Africa. It's like really terrible. And I think because of the death of Queen Elizabeth, there has been a lot of conversation again about the impact of colonialism in Asia and Africa. So how did you research this period? What did you exactly look at?
I didn't know, I didn't get any books in India. Actually, it's not easy to get books in India related to maybe in Goa it might be there, but it's not there in Bangalore, and I could not find. And also I'm from a software background, software engineer. I didn't know whether I should study history and write on that or not, whether I'm eligible for that or not. Then what I did, I started Googling it. Then I found out there are so many books which are available, which has already been translated from Portuguese to English and also from Spanish to English. Okay, so then it was not available in India. So I ordered them in US. So many of my friends helped me to buy them there in the Amazon there. That too, second-hand books, not even first-hand books. Second-hand books, I started purchasing them, and then they sent it across to me. So I read that. So one of them, it's very interesting. There is I did not know what is the sea route life was for Portuguese. What all the difficulties they faced, the details I didn't get it at all. So then I thought, what should I do? So how do I handle that one? I need some details of the sea traveling, so the maritime details that they are going through the sea. So I want to find out how I had to cover that one. Then I got an immediate idea that there was a very nice book which was available of a medieval Spanish sailor's lifestyle. So it's the same time actually. Spain is next to Portuguese, right? So both of them have the same lifestyle only. So they are going to America and these people are coming to India. That's the only difference. So I thought, let me study that. So I studied the Spanish details quite a lot on what was the lifestyle on the sea, actually, on the sea for the sailors. So that and all I studied, and then I brought it to India, references and all those Vasco da Gama and all those things. But after writing this book, I realized writing about Lisbon, Portuguese, Spanish is much easier than writing about Vijayanagara, because we have not documented at all. In India, we don't have the habit of documenting the past in a nice way, without any bias. But they have done a wonderful job. They have listed everything. Every details is there. I get even the sketch of Albuquerque. I get the sketch of Vasco da Gama. Same period. If you want to see how was Krishnadevaraya was looking, how was Purandaradasa was looking, I just don't have those details at all. So they have done so much of it. In fact, we had to be thankful to the Portuguese, because of their travel acts only I am able to see what was Vijayanagara like. Without their travel logs, if they have not come, so two people, mainly Pace and Nunes, so without them, of course Abdul Razak also gives some details, without them, there is no way that as an Indian I would have understood how our seniors were, how was our history. I would not even had an idea that Krishnadevaraya was such a big king. So we had to be thankful to Portuguese for writing this book. Yeah.
Yeah, the amount of detail that you see in the book is so interesting. Like, for example, the cats on the ship, which are there to control, the number of rats that might cause plague and so on, as well as their diets. And so basically, Gabriel's travelogue, the logs that he's writing, is based on an actual set of logs that you must have looked at.
I've read so many logs, actually. So they had the habit of taking a chronicler, actually, along with them. So they were very particular about taking chronicler. So that along with any ship, there will be a chronicler. He keeps on writing the details, everyday details, what happened, without much bias. That's very interesting. At that period, they didn't have bias in writing the chronicles, right? So that they have written. I studied them all. So what all the things which are there. For 2-3 reasons. For me, one was I wanted to find out what kind of names I can use for my characters who are Jewish, who is Catholic, and also I went through that. It was very easy. I got it very easily. But when I wanted Vijayanagara time, what should be the names of the character? What should be the Brahmin name? What should be the Virashaiva name? What should be this? That was a bit difficult. For that, I went into the edicts of Krishnadevaraya period. So what all the Shasanas which he has written, I studied all of them. There indirectly so many names comes. He was present, like that, so many names come. So that I got all these Annambatta, Hampamma, Ammadakanna. So those all the names I got it from those edicts, the Shila Shasana study. So that's how indirectly I was managing in getting the details. The study means almost like 3 years I was reading only Vijayanagara. The studying of Vijayanagara went so much. I remember I went to meet my friends in Raichur. So Raichur went. One of my friend had purchased a 30 by 40 site in Raichur, and he was very happy and very delighted that I have purchased it, and he had paid some 2 lakhs or so. And he told me that, so I have purchased this land, so I paid 2.5 lakhs. And I said, this land was belonging to Krishnadevaraya. Someone has cheated you by selling the same land to you. I said, you just keep quiet. He said, you stop reading Vijayanagara period, he said. So that kind of a thing. So I was almost immersed in that Vijayanagara period and Lisbon era, so I could cover that, yeah.
So it's interesting that you mentioned the king's edicts when you were doing the research, because in keeping with the theme, for example, we are talking about a story told in the common voices of people, right? So this is not a story told by kings and queens. This is a story told by the ordinary people in the novel, Gabriel, Bella, Hampama, and Keshava, right? And so all the major events that happen in the kingdom are filtered through their perspective. You get like pieces of it through their conversations, through hearsay, and all those things. You basically understand the microcosm rather than the bigger picture. So how did that affect the way you told the story and the way you pieced this together?
For me, always history means a common man's life. So history is nothing to do with kings and queens for me. Right? So for me, history means always have to go to the common. I'm a fiction writer. I'm not a historian. For me, only the common man attracts more, right? So I was very clear when I started the novel itself that I'm not going to talk about any of the celebrating Krishna Devaraya or celebrating Albuquerque or nothing of that sort. I was very clear. So it's only through the common man I'm going to write the fiction. Because it's writing about Krishna Devaraya a novel or about Vasco da Gama or about the Albuquerque, Adil Shah. So this is like writing about biographies of our prime ministers, our
it's the official story,
so that's
right?
the kind of thing. I'm not interested in that at all. So I have to write fiction. So the common man speaks much better. See, when we read about Vijayanagara in textbooks, they only talk about like they were selling diamonds and all other things on the street, right? So that's what they're saying. But when I read Purandaradasa says, everyone, whatever the work you are doing, it's only for your food, he says. And he also talks about people are dying without the food, right? So what does it mean? At the same period, I have a contrasting statement that peaks. We are not talking about the common man. So I wanted to find out what the common man is. Because in Krishna Devaraya period, when you celebrate, it's only the celebrations. Like he won that war, he won this war, he was winning all the wars. He didn't lose any war. Krishna Devaraya didn't win any war. But for a common man, if you assume that we are fighting today with Bangladesh, tomorrow with Sri Lanka, the another day with China, and then another day with Pakistan, throughout in 10, 15 years, how bad our life will be. Why don't we document that one? So how much of difficulties a common man would have gone through, right? So that is what was stuck in my mind. So that's what I have to cover as a fiction writer.
You're
so that's
looking past the glamour of the period.
Glamour at any time, I don't care. Not only the past, even now also, I don't care. Because that is not reality. The glamour is not the reality. You have to break it and just enter into it and you see what's the reality is. Even whether I write on the gay life also, I never got into the glamour of the gay life. So I have written the realities they face by the gay man.
That's awesome. So, Maithreyi, I do have a couple of questions for you. One is that translators always talk about, how the life of a translator is filled with difficult choices, right? When you're translating from one language to another, you're trying to bring the meaning as close to the original as possible, while also trying to preserve some of the beauty of the original and so on. So were there certain dilemmas you faced while translating, Vasudhendra's book?
Well, I just think about it in retrospect because when I'm doing I'm just focused on the page. I don't really think about what theories go into it. Translation is very creative. It's not as simple as just finding equivalent words for existing words. You're not just taking a story across the linguistic barrier, you're also taking it into a new reading culture, so to speak. So some things are lost, that is unavoidable, but some things are added in translation. And translated work is not a replica of the original in a different language. I think of it as a new avatar. So one has to have certain liberties and make choices at every step. For me, the thing that struck me most is, as compared to other works that I've translated in the past, is Tejo Tungabhadra is not language driven, it is plot driven. It's easy to visualize. I think it'll make a great film, actually. It has grand canvas. That did give me a lot of freedom because the events happening at such a fast pace. I can see them, and the words in themselves weren't too difficult for me to find equivalents for or whatever. Basically, I was focused on the feeling that each setting was giving, which
So
was.
did you approach the Portuguese part and the Vijayanagara part differently?
Slightly. I mean, this is again, as I said, something that I'm thinking about in retrospect. For me, because it's such a it's a very, very ambitious book. And as opposed to most Kannada works, where I see that the story and the language are very organically interwoven. So by which I mean, a novel written in Kannada is usually about Kannada people. The story comes from the language, and it's about it's very region specific. Here, this is very ambitious in the sense that it is telling the story. Half of the material comes from Portugal, and it's a Kannada writer talking about Portugal, and I thought was very unique. There, I mean, I don't know to what extent this is right, but I felt that it is. When you talk about in post-colonial terms, there's a lot of work written in European languages about the colonies. Yeah, there would be English works talking about historical stuff in happening in India and Africa, wherever. Now you're speaking back. You're telling their stories in our language, and whether you intended it or not, it is a political act, I feel. And so there, it's like you're in your own element when you're doing it in Kannada. It's grand, it's beautiful. Whereas when English takes over, you are kind of treading a tightrope there, because you're going back to a colonial language. Maybe it's not Portuguese, but still, you're talking about it in a European language. Then you're telling their stories in their language, and there is a bit of a. So I was very, very cautious, because my concern was when he explains things in Kannada, it has a different register. When I do the same thing in English, now it's, we are explaining your lifestyle to you back in your language, and that's tricky. So I was worried it might be didactic.
A little bit of a double translation almost.
A little bit like that. So I had to be very cautious in the words I chose to make it not didactic. Yeah. Whereas Vijayanagara, it's spatially removed, and there's some very deeply cultural aspects there. And there, the issue is how much explanation is correct explanation. It's like things you see in a menu, for instance. Masala dosa will be fermented rice batter, pancake, folded in potato mash and served with coconut chutney. I mean, it sounds a little ridiculous, but that explanation is important, because somebody who doesn't know it has to know what is being served. Whereas you may think it's exoticization, and there is no rule there. I mean, how much is too much? Or how little is too little? Because if it's too little, then you are making it opaque. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not very good at explaining things. Perhaps I could read from it later, maybe towards the end, so you would know what I've done. And each step is a choice to make, because there is no rule. For me, everything, I was completely on my own. So I had to make a choice whether to explain this term, whether to leave it as it is, whether I would hope that the reader would understand, because it's repeated several times, so they get a contextual meaning. So both the sections had their own challenges, and I had to kind of navigate between them throughout. But it was a very enjoyable experience in the end, I must say that.
I would like to add something. First, I'm thankful to Maithreyi for taking up this project. It's not everyone who gets such a beautiful translator, so who has done it so well, and a lot of appreciation is coming for the translation, so I'm thankful to you. So hers, from my perspective, the translation challenges, two incidents I'll tell, so that will help you. The one is like in Kannada, there is a sequence where two barbers will be sitting there, okay, so that's all the incident. The two barbers are sitting. So I had used in Kannada a word, I'm not supposed to tell, it seems. It's a word, is a derogatory word terms, and so a court has declared that it is punishable if you use that word. It starts with ha, I won't tell the word. So, but I didn't know while writing, I just wrote it, and afterwards that Samaj, that society of the Barber Society, they called me and they warned me, if you don't remove it, we are going to file a case against you. Okay, so I said no. See, I said like, see, it's just in the second edition now. So I can't, because up to 6 editions we don't change the plates. So after the 6th edition, I'll change the plate. So I'll do it after the 6th edition. So they said no, you have to do it now only. Otherwise, we're going to file a case against you. So I got so scared actually. So I'm not here to hurt anybody's sentiments. So I got it plate changed, though it's expensive, but I got it changed and I got it printed. And that problem sorted out. It just, there is a barber sitting there. That's all they went. But for her, when translated, she doesn't have any problem at all. She said barber. Nobody is going to complain her. So that's the one thing. And second one was very, very unique to the culture of Kannada and English readers actually. So when I completed the manuscripts, all my senior critics were reading this manuscript. I had used the word Turukaru for the Muslims, because that is the word which was used in during that time. Purandara also uses the same word, Kumaravasa also uses the Turukaru. So I have used everywhere Turukaru because they had come from Turkey. Turkey means East Turkey, West Turkey, Central Asia. So they had come from this, they were all called Turukaru. So now I had used, and my senior critic found it very derogatory term. How can you call Turukaru? So it's not a nice word. Please change it and make it Musalman. So I said, like, Musalman is a much pretty recent term, right? But still you have to give respect to the community. You cannot use Turukaru. So I changed it everywhere as a Musalman. I changed. And afterwards she translated as Musalman. Okay. And we gave it for reading, the manuscript reading, to Manu Pillai. So he was writing the blurb, right? So we gave it to him. He said, how can you use Musalman? You had to use Turkey. You had to use, that is the right term, respectable word for the Muslims. Turkey. So change it everywhere, he said. So it's like none of us have any intentions of insulting the community, but the word which we are trying to use, it hurts one's culture. Kannada culture hurts with one word, but same looks modest word for the English readers. So those are the challenges actually, if you ask me, on the translation side.
Sensitivities also, right? Yeah. So something that I noticed about this book is that the story has an incredible amount of suffering, right? So people not just lose lovers and partners, they lose fingers, facial features, right? All these kind of things. But I also noticed that this is a story about transformation. But there is no easy way out. You can't solve your problems by bathing in a holy river or going to confession, to church. It's like real suffering, that whole arc that these characters go through. And I found it very interesting, these choices that you made, that, the things that you put these characters through. Can you talk a little bit about that? Nobody escapes, basically, right?
Yeah. See, medieval period is there. Medieval period is the toughest period. There was so much chaos across the world. Okay, if you ask me whether you would like to live during the Vijayanagara period or whether you would like to live in this period, without any double thinking, I'll say I would like to live now and not during the Vijayanagara period or during the Lisbon period, that the medieval period. Medieval period was so cruel. There was no hesitation for killing or cutting the fingers and all. And also, if you come to the Hindu sites here in India, the beliefs and rituals were so bad, especially women. So they're treated so badly, like sati. Or also, there's this thing I have donating. See, we donate money, we donate coconut, we donate banana to the god. But the medieval period, the donation of this little finger was very common to the god. They just cut this one and throw it on the ratha, the chariot, when chariot is going. So they cut this little finger and throw that little finger on the chariot. Not only the common men, even kings have done that. Some of the kings have done that one. Even one of the Vijayanagara king has done that one. So that was shocking. So looking at that, the whole period, you cannot write any story without suffering, without showing the suffering of the people. The whole period is like that. So you avoiding that one, if you try, even if you want to write about Antapura harem. So if you want to write about harem also, there also so much of suffering. with all Vajra Vaidurya. They have all the diamonds, they have all the ornaments, everything rich. But highest suffering place is the harem of Vijayanagara and harem of Adil Shah period.
Can you talk a little bit about that? What do you mean by suffering there?
Suffering means actually, see, there are, just assume 1400 women. He married 700 queens, Krishnadevaraya. For 700, he had, according to the statistics, they say there were something like 14,000 people to take care of them. Right? All these 14,000 has to be a woman or a transgender. And so trans woman. So there cannot be anyone. So if they get a boy child, they're allowed to see his mother only till the age of 10. After 10, there's no way that a mother can see her son. He will be taken away from her. Because they suspect even him. Okay, the boy also they suspect. And for years, they are alone inside. And for all these, say 700 queens, only one man. See the fight for the sexual desires, like how it should be. And I don't know whether to talk at that levels or not, but I can tell. So they were so cruel, they were not even sending a brinjal vegetable inside the harem without cutting into pieces, because they use it for the masturbation instance. That kind of a cruel acts were there. Oh, harem was, if that will be another novel, if someone writes the issues of Antapura, that will be another. If you are a woman, you should never even think of born in Vijayanagara period or any of those periods. Now you are much more safer. Yeah, much more safer.
So I don't know if I'm supposed to ask this, but when I read the book, there's a lot of Indian characters in it. There's a lot of Portuguese characters in it. But finally, actually, the character that I felt the most for was actually Gabriel, right? The Portuguese character. And I wondered if you had a favorite as well by the end of it.
For me, everyone is important. Like, no, I won't say anything.
This is what mothers say about their children also. But there is actually a real answer here.
But what is very interesting is, when my readers read the book, they said you have covered Portuguese much better than Vijayanagara is what they told me.
No, I don't agree
that was like I was wondering, like, it's total fiction. Like, I have never seen, even Lisbon also have written entire thing in my own imagination, but that appeals to the readers. So I should not be worried. That's how it was. But even saying that Gabriel character, most of them have said the Gabriel is the one is Gabriel, the another one is Champaka. A trans Champaka is one who has been well appreciated. And there's one character which is Adavisami. So he's kind of a sage. So who will be moving around in this one. No? So those are the characters which are real character. For many of them, Bella is they allowed that character. Though she comes in a very small piece, like only the first chapter, a bit of second chapter she comes. The third chapter she comes. Otherwise she's not there. But people have liked that character as well. But for me, no favorite. For me, everyone is important. Yeah, for me, everyone is important in the novel.
So I also noticed, for example, when you have these different sections in the book. One is very romantic, for example. Then there is a section that is incredibly tragic, I think, about the colonialism and all that stuff. You also veer to a slightly, even a slightly horror movie tone in that section where a man is killed in a duel and so on. And readers will find it, I think you'll find it interesting that he hasn't divided the sections by time, but by place, which allows you to bring some, interesting twists in the narrative as well. Yeah. So I think people will be interested to know about how you knit these together when each of these sections are so very different from each other.
Yeah, no, maybe this is a very challenging question. Like, each story writer will have their own way of how they knit. For me, everything first happens here. In my mind, like while walking, while eating, every time I will be constructing the story, and afterwards writing it is it's just a clerical act for me. So I don't think so much creativity happens while writing. Before writing itself, all the creativity process has been taken up. So much imagination which will be going on in my mind, and then I'll put. And I was so clear about all the sections and all. So I used to tell like how many words this novel is going to be, how many pages this book is going to be. So everything I used to tell my friends. So this becomes so many pages, so many words. It will be 1 lakh words. So that's what was the goal. So
You plan it out to that much detail?
It comes to me. I don't plan, but I know how it's going to be, what it will be like, and all. Everything will be known. No, so much of like while writing, it doesn't happen. For me, it happens much before that only. So for me, that process of knitting the story in my mind itself is a enjoyable experience. Not writing. Actually, writing is just a clerical work for me. Yeah. She has more.
Nothing. I just wanted to comment on that. I could actually sense when I was translating, I could sense that this is a planned book, because it was very systematic. I could tell that this planning, you can tell when it's more organic and the story emerges as you write. But I could tell that there's a proper setting here, a planning that has gone in. And also, since he's a publisher himself, he thinks beyond just the story there. And that was an I don't know a lot about publishing, and I learned a lot. While I was translating, he was asking me how many words, 1 lakh words in Kannada. So I'm anticipating 1,30,000. And I think it came up to that much. And, it was all just so clear in his head. And how thick it's going to be, how many pages in English. And, I was quite astounded by how he knows so much.
Yeah, I'm an engineer. I had to plan and execute the work. At the end of the day, without planning, I'm not supposed to start any project, So I do quite a lot of planning.
That's great. Do you want to read maybe from the book a section or something?
Sure, yeah. How do we do?
You read first from anything which is from the Lisbon period. Okay. I read something from the Vijayanagara period. Okay? Yeah.
I'll just read the beginning bit and maybe you can tell me. Sorry. Yeah. You can. Do you know how much I'm supposed to read? You can maybe tell me if it's too much or whatever. A couple of pages, sure. I'm starting from the beginning. Except for the sound of the Tejo flowing, Lisbon is mostly silent at night. But with pricked ears, one might hear the occasional crash of waves in the sea. And like a stone flung into this ocean of silence is the hourly gong of the palace bell. The elderly turn sides in their sleep to this sound. Youngsters, however, are not roused in the least. Hungry babies wake up and cry, but stop the moment they get their mother's breasts. The flambeaux in the palace grounds are the only lights in the city, as the street lamps would have gone off long ago. It was a rainy day. The city had been drenched in the evening's downpour. Unable to step out of their homes, the people had eaten their suppers, drunk extra servings of wine, and slipped into early sleep. It was not yet 15 minutes since the palace bells had rung out 12 times when a furtive figure with its face covered crept out of the back door of the kitchen with feline stealth. It looked around to make sure no one saw it before scampering towards the palace wall. A bundle knotted in a long strip of cloth was tied to its hip. It kept touching the bundle to reassure itself. In a quick moment, it would have been over the palace wall and slinking through one of the alleyways out of reach of the palace guards when the accident happened. The ground was extremely muddy. With no lamp in hand, the figure was finding it hard to make its way through the sludge. In its rush to jump over the wall, it skidded on the mud, crashed to the ground, and broke its leg. A shrill cry of pain escaped its mouth. The guards heard it and noticed that the back door of the kitchen was open. 4 of them came running with their bows drawn. The injured fugitive dragged its broken leg in a futile attempt to escape into the city. The guards let fly several arrows in its direction. One of them must have struck a strategic spot. The figure screamed some indecipherable words before going completely silent. From the sound of its wail, the guards understood that the person was a woman. Her death cry was so terrible that the whole neighborhood was roused, and people came running with torches in their hands towards the light of the guard's flambeau. The guards pushed the crowd aside and removed the cloth covering the face of the corpse and identified her as a servant in the palace kitchen. They immediately understood the nature of the accident. The cloth bundle at her hip was torn and its contents had spilled and mixed with the mud. Peppercorn, clove, cardamom, and cinnamon lay strewn on the ground. The guards sprang into action. Pushing the corpse aside, they began gathering up the mud with the spices in it. Much blood was mixed in it. They began filtering out the spices with the same cloth in which the woman was carrying them. One of the guards kept the people from getting their hands on the spices. They worked for an hour to pick all the spices from the ground. They pulled out the arrow, removed her bloodied clothes, and picked out every remaining grain of spice on her body. When they were satisfied that all of it was retrieved, the guards walked back to the palace. As soon as the guards left, the people fell to the ground and began sifting through the mud. They cackled triumphantly upon finding a few grains of pepper or a pod of cardamom or a stick or two of cinnamon. The corpse of the unfortunate woman lay abandoned at a distance. The blood flowing from it was beginning to clot in the gutter.
So I read it in Kannada. My English is so bad, so I cannot read it directly from English. I would prefer to read from Kannada. So this is a incident. This is a conversation kind of a thing where a trans woman, she's Champaka. So Champaka is talking to the heroine of my novel, Hampamma. Okay, so she's narrating a story what happened few years back. Okay. ಈಗ 10 ವರ್ಷದ ಕೆಳಗೆ ತುಳುವ ನರಸನಾಯಕನ ಜೊತೆ ಒಂದು ಯುದ್ಧಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೆ ಹಂಪಿ. ದಕ್ಷಿಣದ ಕಡೆಗೆ ಯಾವುದೋ ಊರು, ನಂಗೆ ನೆನಪಿಲ್ಲ, ತಮಿಳ್ ಮಾತಾಡೋ ಜನ. ಅಲ್ಲಿಯ ಸಾಮಂತ ದಂಗೆ ಎದ್ದಿದ್ದ. ನರಸನಾಯಕ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಿಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಲ್ಲೇನೋ, ಈಗಿನ ಮಹಾಪ್ರಭುಗಳ ಅಪ್ಪ. ಲಕ್ಷಾಂತರ ಜನ ಯುದ್ಧಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ವಿ. ಯುದ್ಧ ಅಂದಮೇಲೆ ಹೆಂಗಸರು ಬೇಕೇ ಬೇಕಲ್ಲೇನೋ. ಗಂಡಸರು ಹೊರಗೆ ಹೊಡೆದಾಡಿ ಬಂದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಸಂಜೆ ವೇಳೆಗೆ ದೇಹಕ್ಕೆ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಹೆಂಡ ಬೇಕು ಅನಿಸ್ತದೆ. ಅದು ತಮ್ಮ ಹಕ್ಕು ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರು ಅಂದ್ಕೋತಾರೆ. ರಾಜರಿಗೆ ರಾಣಿಯರು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಸೈನಿಕರಿಗೆ ಸೂಳೆಯರು, ಒಟ್ಟಾರೆ ಹೆಣ್ಣುಗಳು ಬೇಕು. ಸಾವಿರಾರು ಜನ ಸೈನಿಕರು, ಸಾವಿರಾರು ಜನ ಸೂಳೆಯರು ನಾ ಮುಂದು ತಾ ಮುಂದು ಅಂತ ಯುದ್ಧಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ. ಯುದ್ಧ ಅಂದರೆ ದುಡ್ಡಿನ ಹೊಳೆ ಹರಿತದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ತಮಗೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಷ್ಟು ದೋಚ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು ಕಾಯ್ತಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಂದಮೇಲೆ ಸೂಳೆಯರು ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ ನಮ್ಮ. ಅಂತೂ ಹೆಂಗಸರು ಗುಂಪೇ ಸೇರಿತ್ತು. ಈ ಹೆಂಗಸರನ್ನು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಮ್ಮಂಥ ಕೊಜ್ಜಗಳು ಬೇಕು. ಪಲ್ಲಕ್ಕಿ ಹೊರೋದಕ್ಕೆ, ಅವ್ರ ಬಟ್ಟಿ ಒಗಿಲಿಕ್ಕೆ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಮೈಕೆ ತೊಳೆಯೋದಕ್ಕೆ, ಸೈನಿಕರಿಗೆ ಸೂಳೆಯರನ್ನು ತಂದು ಒದಗಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ. ಒಟ್ಟಾರೆ ಕೊಜ್ಜಗಳಿದ್ದಷ್ಟು ಅನುಕೂಲ. ಅಂತೂ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಹೋಗಿದ್ವಿ. ಒಂದ್ಸಲ ಸಂಜೆ ವೇಳಕ್ಕೆ 4 ಜನ ಸೈನಿಕರು ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಚಂದಾಗಿರೋ ಸೂಳೆನ್ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಾ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಬೆಳಿಗ್ಗೆ ಯುದ್ಧದಾಗ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಜನನ್ನ ಕೊಂದಿದ್ರಂತೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮಹಾರಾಜರು ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಸುರೆಯನ್ನ ಬಕ್ಷಿಸಾಗಿ ಕಳಿಸಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರು. 4 ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ನಶೆ ಏರಿತ್ತು. ದೇಹಕ್ಕೆ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು. ನಾನು ಸೂಳೆಯರ ಗುಡಾರಗಳ ಕಡೆಗೆ ಹೋದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಗುಡಾರಗಳು ಖಾಲಿ ಖಾಲಿ. ಎಲ್ಲರನ್ನ ಆಗ್ಲೇ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಸೈನಿಕರು ಎಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿದ್ರು. 4-5 ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ಒಬ್ಬಾಕಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕರೆ ಅದೇ ಹೆಚ್ಚು. ಕಲ್ ಸಕ್ರಿ ಹರಳಿಗೆ 4-5 ಇರುವೆ ಮುತ್ತ ಹಂಗೆ ಒಬ್ಬಾಕಿನೇ ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಳ್ತಿದ್ರು. ಲಕ್ಷಾಂತರ ಸೈನಿಕರಿಗೆ ಈ ಸಾವಿರಾರು ಸೂಳೆಯರು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸರಿ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ ಹೇಳು. ಯಾರೂ ಸಿಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಗತಿ ಏನಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ ನಂಗೂ ಚಿಂತೆ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಆದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಗುಡಾರದಾಗೆ ಒಬ್ಬಾಕಿ ಸುಸ್ತಾಗಿ ಮಲ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು ಕಣ್ತು. ಗುಡಾರದ ಒಳಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಆಕಿ ನೆಬ್ಬಿಸ್ದೆ. ಮೈ ಸುಡ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಬೇರೆ ಯಾರನ್ನಾದ್ರೂ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗು ಅಂತ ಬೇಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಲು. ಯಾರು ಇಲ್ಲವಾ, ನೀನೇ ಬಾ, 10 ಗಳಿಗೆ ಇದ್ದು ಬರುವಿ ಅಂತೆ, ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬಕ್ಷಿಸ್ ಕೊಡ್ಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ಎಂದು ದಬಾಯಿಸಿದೆ. ಬೇರೆ ದಾರಿ ಕಾಣದೆ ಆಕಿ ಎದ್ದು ಬಂದಳು. ಕತ್ತಲು ಆವರಿಸಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ಆಕೆಯ ಮುಖ ಗುಡಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ನನಗೆ ಕಂಡಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಹೊರಗೆ ಬಂದ ನಂತರ ದಿಟ್ಟಿಸಿದೆ. ಮೈಕೈ ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡು ರಸರಸವಾಗಿಡ್ಲು. ಇಂತಹ ಚಂದುಳ್ಳಿಯನ್ನು ಸೈನಿಕರಿಗೆ ಒಪ್ಪಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಉಡುಗೊರೆಯನ್ನು ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ ಎಂದು ಆಸೆ ಗರಿಗೆದರ್ತು. ಅವಸರ ಮಾಡಲು ತೊಡಗಿದೆ. ಗುಡಾರದ ಹೊರಗೆ ಬಂದ ನಂತರ ಆಕೆ ನನ್ನನ್ನು 1-2 ಕ್ಷಣ ದಿಟ್ಟಿಸಿದ್ಲು. ಚಂದಾಗಿದೆಯೇನೋ ಹನುಮ ಎಂದು ಕೇಳಿಬಿಟ್ಟಳು. ಎಂದು ಚಂಪಕ್ಕ ಕಥೆಯನ್ನು ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸಿದಳು. ಯಾರಾಕಿ? ನಿನ್ನ ಹಳೆ ಹೆಸರು ಹೆಂಗ್ ಗೊತ್ತು? ತೆಂಬಕ್ಪುರದವಳ? ಹಂಪಮ್ಮಗೆ ಕಥೆಯ ಕುತೂಹಲ. ಆಕಿ ನನ್ನ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ಕಮ್ಲಿ. ಹಂಪಮ್ಮ, ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ 1 ವರ್ಷನೂ ನಾನು ಆಕಿ ಜೋಡಿ ಬಾಳ್ವೆ ಮಾಡಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಸೀರೆ ಉಟ್ಟು ಊರು ತೊರೆದು ಅಂತಃಪುರ ಸೇರಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಲು ಅಂತ ಯಾರೋ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಆಗಿನ್ನೂ ಆಕೆಗೆ 13 ವರ್ಷ. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ಲು ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಕೆದ್ಕೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಗತ ಬದುಕನ್ನು ಕೆದ್ಕೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನನಗೂ ಆಸಕ್ತಿ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ಹೀಗಿಲ್ಲಿ ಅಚಾನಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಸಿಕ್ಳು. ಒಂಥರ ಸಂಕಟ ಐತೆ ಹಂಪಿ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಲಿ, ತಡ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಸೈನಿಕರು ನಂಗೆ ಹೊಡಿತಾರೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವಸರ ಮಾಡಿ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋದೆ. ಸಿಂಹಗಳು ಎಳೆ ಜಿಂಕಿ ಮರೆಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಆಕ್ರಮಣ ಮಾಡೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಕಮಲಿ ಮೇಲೆ ಮುಗಿಬಿದ್ರು. ಅವರು ಸಂಜೆ ವೇಳೆಗೆ ಹೆಣ್ಣುಗಳನ್ನು ಅನುಭವಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ರಾಜರಿಂದಲೇ ಅನುಮತಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿರ್ತದೆ. ಅಂದಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಯಾವ ಅಂಜಿಕೆ ಹೇಳು? ಗುಡಾರದ ಬಾಗಿಲು ಹಾಕೋದಕ್ಕೂ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕದರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಾಗ್ಲ ಕೂತು ಎಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಿದೆ ಹಂಪಿ. ಹಿಂದು ಮುಂದು ಅಕ್ಕ ಪಕ್ಕ ಆಕೆಯ ಯಾವ ಭಾಗವನ್ನು ಬಿಡದಂತೆ 4 ಆಕೆಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಆಕ್ರಮಣ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಎಲ್ಲ ಮುಗಿದಾಗ ಆಗಲೇ ರಾತ್ರಿ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಅವಳ ಜ್ವರ ವಿಪರೀತವಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಹೊರಗೆ ಎದ್ದು ಬಂದವಳು, ಗುಡಾರ ತನಕ ಎತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗು, ಸುಸ್ತಾಗದೆ, ನಡಿಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗವಲ್ತು ಎಂದು ಬೇಡಿಕೊಂಡ್ಳು. ಅವಳ ದೇಹಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ಬಾಯಿ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದರೆಂದರೆ, ತೊಟ್ಟ ಬಟ್ಟೆಯನ್ನು ಹಾದು ರಕ್ತ ಒಸರುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಹೆಗಲ ಮೇಲೆ ಕುರಿಮರಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಅವಳ ಗುಡಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಒಯ್ದು ಮಲಗಿಸಿದೆ. ಬಾಯಾರದೆ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನೀರು ಕೊಡು ಎಂದು ಬೇಡಿಕೊಂಡಳು. ನಾನೇ ತಾಮ್ರದ ತಂಬಿಗೆಯಿಂದ ಅವಳ ಬಾಯಿಗೆ ಹನಿ ಹನಿ ನೀರು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕುಡಿಸ್ದೆ. ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಅರೆ ಎಚ್ಚರ. ಆದರೂ ಸಾವರಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು, ನೀನಾದರೂ ಸುಖವಾಗಿದ್ದೀಯಾ ಹನುಮ ಎಂದು ಕೇಳಿದಳು. ಏನೆಂದು ಉತ್ತರ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು ಹೇಳು? ಪ್ರಥಮ ಬಾರಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಬದುಕು ಸುಖವೋ ದುಃಖವೋ ಎಂದು ಯೋಚಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದೆ.
We can take some questions from the audience on the book.
Knowing you as a writer and a publisher both, how difficult it is to publish in regional languages? Because in India, we have more than 122 languages and so many dialects. And you really narrate it so well in Kannada, right? With the emotion, with the like the flow, right? So how difficult it is to publish in regional languages, because if you'll see in India, publishing wise, the maximum, like 26-27% is Hindi, remaining all is English, and very few, like 1-2%, 3% comes from the regional thing. So what's your view on that?
Very sad state. It's not only just Kannada, it's even Hindi also. Hindi, Telugu, Tamilu. So all vernacular language publishing are declining. They're still existing because in Karnataka especially the government support is very high and readers are buying. So if you really ask me, like if government stops its support, how many authors can survive in Kannada? It will be hardly some 10 to 20, not more than that. So it's that bad actually, because vernacular language no one is respecting. So leave others. Even in my own home, my sister's son and daughters, they cannot read my books in Kannada. So in that way, I feeling that publishing in English, translating in English, it's not for English readers, it's only my Kannada readers only, because in future they can't read Kannada. In the next generation, at least let them read in English their own stories. Instead of reading Harry Potter, let them read my own Vijayanagara story. So I'm so particular about that. It's very, very sad. It's not only our case. I think even German, French and all also, they are suffering in the publishing. So they're also not doing so well is what I heard. So English is dominating so high across the world. Okay, across the world. All other languages, vernacular language, which are much, much, much older than English, they are dying actually. So means as a print media. Though books are published in Kannada, at least 10,000 books are published every year. People do. Yeah. Because of the digital revolution, publishing a book is very easy, right? But selling is not that easy. So it has to be strengthened. It can happen only if our education system introduces the studies in vernacular language. They have to start studying the Kannada so well. Yeah. So if without that change, with the government taking that step, I don't think these vernacular language writing will exist for long. That's my other thing. But I'm being lucky because my books have been read very well. Like so many readers, they buy lakhs together books I have sold. Okay, this itself within the COVID period, actually, starting of the COVID, I published this book. I didn't know that COVID is going to come. Otherwise, I would have stopped it. But starting of the COVID, after this book published, the COVID came. So, but still within 2 years, I have sold more than 11,000 copies of the books. So that's a record, like for Kannada, this thing. So still there are people who are willing to read, but younger generation, so those who are studying in 10th standard, when I was 10th, I used to read so many books. Now if I go and ask a 10th standard kid, is he reading Kannada book? No. That's very sad.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Vasu and Maithreyi. Vasu, watch your words. You said after the publication of this book, COVID came. And now the English book is getting launched. Hope you don't have another pandemic.
So Guru is another very famous author in Kannada, a novelist. His hijab is exceptionally popular in Kannada, and it's been translated in English also. He's an emergency medicine expert. He lives in US and he has come here for an occasion, and I'm glad that he's part of this event as well.
Thank you. This is not about me. So, I've been a part of Tejo Tungabhadra since the inception of the idea, writing and execution. Vasu used to send, I was very, the feeling is, I share the feeling that when he used to tell, I just had to write like 2,000 more words to finish this book, finish this chapter. And, we always had that question, how can you plan a book like that? That's one thing. I think the question is to the people who have read this in English, mostly to you and whoever else. Vasu's book has received, obviously it is 10th edition or 11th edition, I don't know exactly. Accolades, widespread readership and awards. But this question is a little bit political one. When he was writing the book and it was being shown to few eminent critics, one of the response that he received was, you have resorted to a very popular left-leaning, well, that's why exactly I'm trying to tell, very popular left-leaning ideology. I don't know whether it was needed or not. In spite of having thousands of positive reviews and the book, there has been some reviews which, obviously there will be there will be some of those things. There have been some of those reviews which are telling that this book at one level promotes Sanatana Vada, Sanatana Dharma and that kind of stuff. So this is based on, there's a lot of different things when you read a book in Kannada, and the readership is completely different. You don't consider the writer's background and what exactly writer's background or what his previous works are, or what exactly does he have an agenda. I mean, I know Vasu for a long time, but I was just wondering if when you read it in English, did you even get just like a glimpse of this kind of any agenda being pushed? This is just, because I'm trying to tell, because there has been lots of, social media comments. There are people taken like an agenda, almost like trying to get this book and, basically trying to get a different meaning, spin on everything that is there, dissecting the sentences, reading in between the sentences, and getting everything into a completely different, through a different lens. So that's why I was just wondering what, obviously I'm not trying to put ideas into people's mind, but this is something that we have seen in Kannada. That's kind of
I don't know. I think if you need to read between the lines to frame an agenda, then I don't think they have a very good argument. What I found was that I thought this was a really powerful story. And I think Vasudhendra's heart is probably with his very ordinary people and characters, right? And as a result, he's always pushing back against power structures, and you're documenting the impact that these power structures have on these people. Like you talked about, what they have to go through because of the king requires a sacrifice, or, the king of Portugal suddenly demands that there is conversion that happens with a minority community and so on. So he's documenting that impact that it has on people. And if that is suddenly a left point of view, then I would be very puzzled, because I think a writer that is sympathetic to, the common people of a period is the kind of history that we want to read, right? Not the one that is narrated, like you said, in the formal edicts, or, what is documented by the court and by the kingdoms and so on. So I definitely disagree with that perspective. I'm not surprised that it's there in this environment, but yeah.
But something is for me, it's very clear. See whether you are left or right. The people keep on asking me this question, especially in Kannada literature, where it's very, very common. So my answer is very simple. I am neither left nor right, not even straight. I am a gay. Okay, so there's no question of taking any side or any lineation. Yeah.
I also, just a little thing, I mean, you pretty much said, I feel that, these labels are very easy and very reductionist to thrust in this is left, this is right, or whatever, because this is a story of lived lives from the ground, and there is so much nuance to life that it's wrong to, in fact, just thrust these labels and say this is left, this is right, or whatever. So, I read it very deeply because I had to engage with it at a very, very personal level while I was doing it, and I didn't feel that way. And I thought it was a thoroughly enjoyable story, and it's wrong to thrust labels on a work as grand as that.
Thank you.
So first of all, feel so happy to be here and to listen to both of you. There were so many questions as I listened to the evocative readings, but I thought I'll ask you one question. So the two scenes that you read out, one in English from Lisbon and one in Kannada from Vijayanagara itself, were so rich, detailed, evocative. They had conversation, they had the behavior of people. As a translator, how might the translation differ from the original? If the two of you could illustrate a few points where it would be very similar and a few points where perhaps the form or expression or would differ, that would be very, thank you. You remember?
Perhaps maybe just read one section
in English. No. Maybe you can give one example. I Maithreyi needs time to think, but I can tell immediately. So one or two incidents you will come to know how it differs. Actually, the one is one scene where one of the character, this Muslim character, so his fiancée name is Bella. Okay, now he has come somewhere in the India. Now he is going with another lady, so he's going traveling and all. So that's time when this Purandaradasa comes. Actually, the Purandaradasa, as soon as he comes, like they after the bhajan, so they will do a bhajan and all Purandaradasa, and they start giving Bella as prasada. Okay, so the Bella is Jaggery in Kannada. Right? So they say, keep on giving. This guy has told all the story before, and the previous night he has told the story of his Bella is his previous fiancée and all, and she has got some jealous about that. Okay, so and the Purandarasa comes and tells send him also. I will give him Bella as well. So give Sargisa from yesterday is talking about Bella only. Give him as much Bella as possible. See, for Purandara it's so easy and it comes so easily there. For her it's very difficult to translate that. It's just untranslatable actually. And also somewhere I have said like sahebere. So everywhere this Portuguese slaves they call sahebere to the Albuquerque or this thing. But when she translated, first she started translated as sir. But afterwards we realized sir is nothing to do with Portuguese life. Sir is British, so we can't use the word sir. So then she went and she changed that word. So now this we cannot use. But it keeps on happening throughout the book. Wherever the regional things are there, the cultural specific dominant things are there, that's very tough to bring it in English is what I felt. Yeah, if you remember anything?
I found that section. That was a difficult pun because Bella is the name of the person and Bella in Kannada is, jaggery, and it was wonderful. I think something is lost in that bit of the translation, and I found that. So she says, well then, please give him some holy food, an extra handful in fact. He's been chanting Bella, Bella since yesterday. If you give him a little jaggery, he'll be happy. She responded with her own interlinguistic pun and looked sideways at Ahmad Khanna.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of weave in an explanation, but it's still not good enough, I feel.
Yeah, there it comes so easily. So, Bella Kodi, ninna inda Bella, 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 antidane Bella Kodi, Jastine Kodi anta. So, it's so easy to write in Kannada. For her, it's a challenge actually. So, that's how it is. But for me, one thing I'll take is, see, the people who read Kannada original and English also, English novel also, will not be more than 20 to 30 people, according to me. Okay, those two are totally different reading session. Those who are read in Kannada as well as in English, of course, one is her and another one is me. We don't have a choice. So both of us have read, and there are proof. Some of my friend Arvind has come, so he has also read both, but very few of them will read. So you have to treat both as different books. Don't try to see whether it has been as a word by word of that original novel or not. Whether the English version is communicating a story for you in a nice way or not. That's all is important. You should not compare with the original at all. I don't believe in that comparison to the original. So we should treat it as an independent book. Nothing related to Kannada.
Hi everybody, I am Nataraj. The whole world, especially our India, has been divided into left and right. But a writer should be in the middle path. Then only he can reach everybody in the world. So, ಅದು ನನಗೆ ಅನಿಸಿದ್ದು ವಸುಧೇಂದ್ರ ಅವರು ನನಗೆ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಪರಿಚಯ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ವಾಟ್ಸಪ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಪರಿಚಯ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಪುಸ್ತಕವನ್ನು ನಾನು ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ರೀಡ್, ದೆನ್ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು think over that. Thank you very much. A writer should be in the middle path. He should reach the left and right and everybody of the world. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that suggestion. But according to me, if someone says writer should be this path, better you leave that path and take some other path. You have to always break the path. Whatever they say, you break that path and go in a new path. That should be the way of breaking all the rules is the right of an author actually. Whatever the rule you say, I am going to break it for you. So that's how a writer should be.
Sir, namaste. First of all, thank you for translating this book because I was really tired to tell my friends. I usually used to kathena ಓದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಆಡಿಯೋ ಕಳಿಸ್ತಿದ್ದೆ, ಅದು ಮಾಡಿ ಸಾಕಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಫಾರ್ ಡೂಯಿಂಗ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್. ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಅಂದರೆ, ನೀವು ಇವಾಗಷ್ಟೇ ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಮಧ್ಯಕಾಲೀನ ಭಾರತದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಥಿತಿ ತುಂಬ ಕಠಿಣವಾಗಿತ್ತು ಏನೋ ಆಲ್. ಆದರೆ ಇಡೀ ಪುಸ್ತಕವನ್ನು ನಾವು ಸಿಂಹಾವಲೋಕನ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ Gabriel was the one who suffered the most.
Yeah.
So, hege contradict.
Yeah. Both actually, it's the men as well as women, but especially in India, women have suffered more because of this religious belief. The one is the sati, and the sati reason they give is so interesting actually. So you have to see why that sati system has come. Okay, why she has to kill herself. So along with the husband means the other men says actually saying that if you don't make her die along with her husband, the mind of a woman is so flexible and so like moving around, she will poison her husband and marry another person. That's what he says. That's why we want to prevent that one. That's why we have bought the sati system is what they tell. It's such a cruel thing. So it's been even recorded by Nonich. So, okay. So that kind of thing. So not only those systems, and woman was not allowed to choose her own husband. Even now also it's there, but there it was still worst. And two people will fight for a woman, and they don't know whether she is interested in them or not. Nothing. No question of asking for her at all. Two people will fight, and the winner will marry this woman. That's how things were. The women's state was very bad. Men was slightly better in that way.
Kathelli,
Yeah.
whatever you have said, everything was faced by Gabriel.
Yeah, if your nasib is bad, whether you are woman or man, you will suffer. If it is good in any period, even in medieval period, you will be born as Krishna Deva Raya, you will enjoy your life. So the heart is nothing to do with it, actually. So in story, unfortunately, he is the sufferer. Gabriel is the sufferer. But it may not. Overall, if you take it, men and women, so that's how the things were. Yeah? Thanks. But thanks for making audio clips and sending it to your relatives and friends, okay, from Canada.
Namaskara to all of you. I think it's a great thing that Vasudhendra's books are getting translated into different languages, not only English. I think Mohan Swami, he's translated to other international languages as well. I have read several of his Kannada books as well. Vasudhendra, ನೀವು ತುಂಬ ಪ್ಲ್ಯಾನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತೆಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಲ್ವಾ, ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕೆಲವು ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳನ್ನ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಲಾಗಿದೆ. ಇನ್ನು ನೀವು ಬರಿಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಆ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕನ್ನಡ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಬರೀತೀರಾ ಅಥವಾ?
So she's asking because now they are getting it translated to English and English readers are coming into picture. When you are going to write in Kannada next book, so how is it going to impact you is the question. Like I'm also thinking about it actually. So I think it will have an impact because I always have a mind like it might get translated. So something should be convincible to everyone.
Yeah, international
level. So that might work in the background because see, my first novel is hardcore Brahmin local society and that dialect and all I have written. But that's impossible to translate also. It's very difficult actually.
It's not.
It's not. Yeah, she has done Halla Bantu Halla. She can do that one. But I don't know how much appealing it will be because they don't know the culture itself. So it's tough to appeal the readers. It might have an impact, but as an author, I should stay away from such constraints. You know, you should free flow. You should write whatever the topic haunts you. You should write about it. I don't know what I'm going to write.
I was going to say the same thing.
Please.
You write the way you write. Leave it to me. I'll handle the translation.
Yeah. If translator like Maithreyi is there, you should be least worried about what subject you are choosing and all. She's such a talented translator, and also she's a fiction writer, not only just translator. She writes in English. She has written a novel also, Sylvia. So generally, people who write in that language are good translator. I'm also a good translator. Okay, I translate in Kannada. So I translated from Telugu to Kannada. I translated from English to Kannada, and from my publication, so many books every year, 3 to 4 books gets translated to Kannada, and I edit each and every line. So I'm good at the Kannada language translation altogether. But yeah, so indirectly it might be there, an impact might be there.
Okay. And I agree with her observation that this book will make an excellent film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Vasu and Maithreyi, for the really wonderful book and really fantastic translation. I had the privilege of reading it both in Kannada and in English, and both worked really, really well as far as I was concerned. You know, the one thought I had, one question I had, in fact, when I first read it in English, maybe everybody here will feel similarly when they read it. What is the analogy in English literature you'll go to think of a book like this? And my mind immediately went to Amitav Ghosh, with an imagination which is so global. He's the only one I've seen of that kind of an imagination. I was curious, asking maybe both of you all, in Kannada literature, a book like Vasu's book, is there any other book like that? Because all the other great classics are rooted in location and place, right? And he's had that imagination of going beyond that place. So I was curious whether you had any thoughts on any other books like that.
While translating, even I thought of Amitav Ghosh, and because which is what I said in the beginning. From at least my Kannada reading is I'm sorry to say it's rather limited, but I couldn't think of any other Kannada work that attempts something as ambitious as this.
No, for me, I can't tell Amitav Ghosh because I have never read anything of Amitav Ghosh. Okay, so absolutely, I have never read him. So, but Kannada people have tried this kind of writings. Some of them, which I can immediately recall, is one is Masti Venkatesh Iyengar's both classics, the Channa Basavanayaka and Masti Venkatesh Iyengar, this thing, Chikavira Rajendra, and S.L. Bhairappa's Sartha. Sartha is a similar kind of writing, and I believe Niranjana's Mrutyunjaya is a similar kind of a book. I haven't read that one. And Shankar Mokashi Punekar also has written another book. Avadeshwari is supposed to be in the similar lines, which I haven't read. Okay, but for me, the influence of Masti and Bhairappa is quite high. Okay, I'm planning to read Amitav Ghosh soon in future, in coming days. Many have told me it is similar to Amitav Ghosh books, they said, but I haven't read him till now.
Yeah. Hello, everybody, and all the best to Tejo Tungabhadra, translated version as well as the original version. Okay, my question is to Mr. Vasudhendra. So, actually, me as an author got inspired from your book to write a similar kind of fiction in a different geographical location. Okay, so I just wanted to ask you what advice you would like to give similar authors who would like to write about the commoners in historical setup.
You don't be afraid of any subject. If a Britisher can come and make a film on Gandhi, we can definitely make a film on Victoria Queen. Okay, so don't ever doubt about your abilities. We can write about any country, any period, any community. So that the imagination will be so powerful. It might require a basic studying, so you need to study the related books and all, so find out. And afterwards, the human behavior is same. Whether is a man here in suffering of a man in India, whether suffering of a man in Portuguese, doesn't make much difference. Love here and love there. Do you think it will be different? Both love are same. So you just have to write and take courage and just keep on writing. It works well. So there's no way that you should constrain yourself to your own experience. Yeah.
Okay. And another question to Maithreyi. Yeah, so it's about the translation. So recently, I read a book of Chanda Pustaka itself called Vadivasal, in which the writer Satyaki says before translating it, he read about the culture of Tamilians and the Jallikat, everything. So what was your homework? I mean, what homework did you do before translating this book? I just wanted to know.
No, my approach is the book is all I need, and the page. My approach is through language. And I mean, if there were bits that I did not understand, because there's so much of research has gone into it, it's all his work. And if I didn't understand it or misunderstood something, we were working very closely. I was consulting him every step of the way. So that was for objective facts, but my approach is through the language. So I don't really bother with any kind of homework. I just get into the book directly, just plunge into the deep end and swim ashore.
No, I can add to that, I think. So there's a difference between Satyaki, I know, so I have published his book, and Maithreyi also. Maithreyi doesn't need other preparation because she's born in Karnataka and brought up in Karnataka and she knows everything here. But Satyaki is born and brought up in Bangalore, but he is trying to translate Tamil book to Kannada. Okay. So for him, knowing that is very important. He is always a Kannada reader, but he has learned Tamil so that he was using that skill to translate to Kannada. So both of them are very different here. For Maithreyi, she has by default has got all the required skills to translate a Kannada novel.
Okay. So final question for both of you. After Tejo Tungabhadra, what next? Any upcoming projects you're planning? Yeah, this is the last question. I'll just move to my seat.
Yeah, well, as a translator, I'll just sit back and wait for him to write his next book. But I'm doing my own writing. I'm working on a collection of short fiction right now.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. So I'm studying various subjects. I don't know what I'm going to write down the line.
ಭಾಷಾನುವಾದ ಇದೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಭಾವಾನುವಾದ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಭಾಷೆ ನಾವು ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಎಲ್ಲಾದ್ರೂ ಭಾವ ಕಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋ ಸಾಧ್ಯತೆಗಳು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದಾವೆ. ಸೊ ನೀವು ಆ ಥರ ಏನಾದರೂ ಫೇಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ರೆಡ್ ಜಾನ್ ಕಾಗರ್ಸ್ ಇಂಟು ಥಿನ್ ಏರ್. ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಎವರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ. ನಾ ಅರ್ಧ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಓದಿದೆ, ಅದಾದಮೇಲೆ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಓದಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ನನಗೆ ಅದೊಂದು ಫೀಲ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಲೈಕ್ ಜಾನ್ ಕಾಗರ್ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಹಿ ಕ್ಲೈಂಬ್ ದ ಮೌಂಟೇನ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಹಿ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ರಿಟನ್ ಹಿಸ್ ಓನ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜಾಗಿ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ತೀರಾ, ಭಾವದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಳಿದು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನೀವೇನಾದರೂ
It's a limitation actually. So when translating, so it's a limitation for me when I translated into thin air, right? The whole title itself is a challenge. Into thin air has got a different meaning, means a pun in English, means it's gone into thin air means it's disappeared is kind of a meaning which is there. And also into thin air means the thin air of the mountains, you know. So both he has used, John Crocker. In Kannada, we don't have a word for thin air only. Because we don't have a mountain which is as tall as Himalayan mountains where you need to coin that word, thin air. So why do we have it, that word? So I don't have that word itself. So that itself is a starting of a challenge, and she will have the similar ones as such. So see, for me, like I keep telling this metaphor. See, in your childhood, no, when this instant coffee was discovered. Okay, instant coffee was discovered. The title of the brew was the first instant coffee in my childhood. They used to give an advertisement saying that almost same taste as filter coffee. Okay, almost same taste as filter coffee, and they never had a courage to say that this is equivalent as filter coffee. And that remains same even for the translation. If I translate a book, I cannot make you like a filter coffee. The original one I cannot give it to you. I can maximum give almost equivalent to that. Yeah, so that's how it is.
And for me, I approach it. Words comes second. As you were saying, I just try to recreate the same affect there was. So bhava anuvada, I think that is more my way of approaching things. Just if like thin air, for instance, since there is no equivalent, you have to think of something else that creates that kind of effect, if not the exact one. And you have to coin things and all of that. So words are secondary. It's really the emotions and the feelings and the context of the setting.
ಭಾವವನ್ನು ಕೊಡುವಾಗ ಅದು 50% ಇಂದ 90% ವರೆಗೆ ಹೋಗುವುದು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ 90% ಎಕ್ಸೀಡ್ ಆಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಷ್ಟ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ. ನೀವೇನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಾ?
ನನ್ಗೆ ಅದು ಕ್ವಾಂಟಿಫೈ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬರಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಅದು 50% 90% ಅಂತ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟಿವ್. ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಒಂದೊಂದ್ ಸರ್ತಿ 100ಗಿಂತ ಮೀರಿನೂ ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು. ಸೊ that is also possible.
Sometimes it can go better than the original. That happens only when a novel is written about a community in a language other than the language spoken by them. Getting it? See, recently we translated one English novel to Kannada. That English novel was written in 1944 by a Dodballapura lady. She's a Muslim lady. She has written a novel in English, and that is 1944 is a Muslim family story she has written. Now I got it translated from a Muslim boy again. So Dadapir translated. He translated Kannada. See, Kannada, and he introduced Urdu, so a lot of Urdu which she didn't have the liberty to introduce Urdu in English. So many times this translated version reads much better than the original because they have chosen a language which doesn't suit that community while writing the original novel. So they only that case the translation can be better than the original. Otherwise it will not be as equivalent as that.
I have an example here with Milan Kundera, right? He's a Czech writer. So he wrote some of his books in French, which then got translated back into Czech. So the original is actually French.
Yeah, definitely. If you translate R.K. Nara into Kannada or Tamil, they will be far superior than the English.
ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ವಸುಧೇಂದ್ರ ಬಹಳ ವಿನಯದಿಂದ ಕನ್ನಡದ ಕೆಲವು ನಾವೆಲ್ ಕಾದಂಬರಿಗಳು ನೀವು ಹೆಸರಿಸಿದಿರಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಅನನ್ಯವಾದ ಕಥಾವಸ್ತುವನ್ನು ಬರೆದ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕಾದಂಬರಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅಭಿನಂದನೆ. ಅದು ಈಗ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ವ್ಯಾಪಕ ಓದುಗರನ್ನು ತಲುಪ್ತಿದೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೂ ಅಭಿನಂದನೆ. ನಂದು ಎರಡು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ. ಇಷ್ಟು ವ್ಯಾಪಕವಾದ ಕಥಾವಸ್ತುವನ್ನು ಇಂತಿಷ್ಟೇ ಅಂದರೆ 1,00,000 ಶಬ್ದ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ರಿ, ಅದರಲ್ಲೇ ಹಿಡಿದಿಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಗೆ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನಿಸಿದಿರಿ? ಅದು ಒಂದು. ಎರಡನೇದ್ದು, ನೀವು ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಅಂದರೆ ನೀವು ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿರಿ? ವಿಜಯನಗರದಿಂದ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಲಿಸ್ಬಾನ್ ಅಂತ? ಅಂದರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಆ ಸುಳಿವಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿತ್ತು ಸ್ಪೈಸ್ ಟ್ರೇಡ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಸುಳಿಯುವ ಅಥವಾ ಇನ್ನೇನಾದ್ರೂ ಸುಳಿವು ಸಿಕ್ಕಿತ್ತು?
So that started, second question I'll answer first. So because I started with the research on Vijayanagara only, because it's very dear to me. Hampi is very nearby. And childhood I used to hate Hampi because from first standard to 10th standard, that this tour, holiday tour for Hampi means in school means it's only Hampi. And I used to curse why Hampi is so nearby, you know. So only Hampi, 10 rupees you have to give and they take us to Hampi and they bring us back next day. So I used to hate Hampi, but now I love Hampi. So I started from Vijayanagara. Then I started reading. I didn't know what I'm going to write also, right? So I kept on reading. During that time, I think Manu Pillai wrote Ivory Throne. I read Ivory Throne also because it also got a lot of Vijayanagara details and spice trade and all was there. There I got fascinated by the Portuguese story. Then I went into the Portuguese line. So I kept on reading. And it went so much like I'm going on from here. Then I went to Adil Shah period and started reading Adil Shah. When I was reading Adil Shah, the Mughal came into picture. So I started reading Mughal. Then I didn't know where to stop. That was a challenge actually. See, as a fiction writer, I had to stop somewhere. I was not knowing where I had to start writing my fiction. I went and spoke to my senior critic, Kannada critic. He said, "You are a fiction writer. You are not a historian. You stop it. Whatever you have read is enough for you. You go and start writing the novel." He assured me. Then I started. So, a translation is like charana. That means hiking. You know, when you go for hiking, you go take paths, whatever the paths you get. So keep on moving around the whatever is available in the forest. You travel, right? So that's how the research should be. There should not be one way. Will not be there. Yeah. But the first question when you said, I'm very very thrilled, and I'm hoping for the readers, English readers, are going to receive my book in the same way as Kannada readers have received. Because from childhood onwards, I have this question. I sitting in a remote corner of Karnataka, which is Ballari district, Sandur, I was reading Marquez in Kannada. So why not a boy sitting in South America in a village, why can't he read our Kuempu? Why can't he read our Devanur Mahadeva? So that was always I was wondering why it's not happening at all. So translation is required to tell the world that we are also writing equally talented literature in Kannada. So I'm very very thankful for that. So we have to get into that. Yeah.
All the best to you and
thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಾನೊಬ್ಬಳು ಕನ್ನಡದ ಓದುಗಳು. ನಾನು ಯಾವುದೇ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಆಗಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳನ್ನು ಓದಿಲ್ಲ. ವಸುಧೇಂದ್ರ ಅವರ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಕಥೆಗಳನ್ನು ಓದ್ತಾ ಬಂದವಳು. ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಅಮೆರಿಕಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗುವಾಗ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಯಾವ್ದು ದಪ್ಪ ಬುಕ್ ಇದೆ ಅದು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗುವ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ ತೊಗೊಂಡೋದೆ. ಓದ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಮಧ್ಯಕಾಲೀನ ಆ ತೇಜೋ ನದಿ ಮತ್ತು ತುಂಗಭದ್ರಾ ನದಿಗಳ ನಡುವಿನ ಒಂದು ಜರ್ನಿಯನ್ನು ಅವರು ಯಾವ ಥರ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಹೋದ್ರು ಅಂದರೆ, ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳ ಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇಷ್ಟು ಶೋಚನೀಯ, ನಾನು ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಒಂದು ಸಲ ಸರಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೆ, ಇಷ್ಟು ಶೋಚನೀಯವಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ನಮಗೂ ಸಹ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ಆ ಕಥೆಯನ್ನು ನನ್ನ ಮಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಹೋದೆ. ಹೀಗಾಯ್ತು, ನನಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಇರಿಟೇಷನ್ ಆಯಿತು ಅಂದರೆ, ಅಪ್ಪ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ನಾನು ಅದೇನೋ ಐ ಡೋಂಟ್ ನೋ, ಅಂದರೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇತ್ತು ನಂದು ಅಂತ. ಆವಾಗ ನನಗೆ ಇದು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ತದ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೆ ನಾನು. ಸರ್ ಅದು ಬರ್ತದೆ ಅಂದರೆ ನಂಗೆ ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ತುಂಬ ಖುಷಿ ಆಯಿತು. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ನಮ್ಮದೇ ಆದ ಒಂದು ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಯನ್ನು, ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆದ ಒಂದು ನೋವನ್ನು, ನಮ್ಮ ಮಧ್ಯಕಾಲೀನ ಹೆಣ್ಣಿನ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿಯನ್ನು ಒಂದು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ, ಈಗ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಕನ್ನಡದವರೇ, ನಾವು ಕನ್ನಡ ಮಾತೃಭಾಷೆ ಕನ್ನಡ, ಆದರೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಕಾದಂಬರಿಯನ್ನು ಓದಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರಲ್ಲ. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ಈಗ ಅದನ್ನು ಹಿಂದಿ, ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ಗೆ ಮತ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜಲ್ಲಿ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂದರೆ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಖುಷಿ ಆಯಿತು. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ್ದು, ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ವಿಜಯನಗರ ಸಾಮ್ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಕಥೆಯನ್ನು. ಬಟ್ ನಾನು ನೂರಾರು ಸಲ ಹಂಪಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ನೀವು ಒಂದು ಹಳ್ಳಿಯನ್ನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದು ಜಾಗಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು, ಅದು ಯಾವ ಜಾಗ ಅದು ಹುಡುಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಾನೀಗ ಬಂದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೆ. ಈಗ ಬಂದು ಒಂದು ವಾರ ಆಯಿತು ನಾನು ಅಮೆರಿಕಾಯಿಂದ. ಅವಾಗ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡೆ, ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಜಾಗಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿ ನೋಡಬೇಕು, ಅದು ಯಾವ ಹಳ್ಳಿ, ನಾನು ಹೋಗಿರಿ ಅದು ಆ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್, ಆ ಜಾಗವನ್ನು ನೋಡಿ ಬರ್ಬೇಕಂತೇಳಿ.
Thanks ma'am, I'm so happy you enjoyed the book so much and you have read and you have told the story to your daughter also. Yeah, but don't follow all the details, geographical details I given in in the book. Okay, most of the things will be imagination. It will be there only here, and it won't be available on the map. Okay, so don't try for that. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸರ್. ಮಧ್ಯಕಾಲೀನ ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳ ಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಅಷ್ಟು ಶೋಚನೀಯ.
Yeah, you can read the
ಆಮೇಲೆ
books.
ಮತ್ತೆ ವೈಶ್ಯರಿಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಾಧಾನ್ಯವನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ಅವರು. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಬ್ಬಳು ವೈಶ್ಯ ಆಗಿರ್ತಾಳಲ್ವಾ.
So that, see, Devadasis who were there during that time, so they were like feminist of modern day. So they had the full liberty. They were able to study Sanskrit. They were able to study dance, music, anything. Even the Vedas they were able to supposed to study. So there was no restriction at all, and she has been respected highly across the Vijayanagara area. So Devadasis, I wanted to bring that part actually. So how respectful a woman was, even being a woman. So I said, no, even in the medieval period, maybe if you're born as a Devadasi, you will enjoy the life better than
ಕೃಷ್ಣ ದೇವರಾಯರಿಗೂ ಸಹ ಅವಳು ಇನ್ಫ್ಲೂಯೆನ್ಸ್
yeah, she can even talk capacity. To so they had even the luxury of chewing pan in front of Krishna Devaraya. No one else had the luxury of chewing pan in front of Krishna Devaraya. It is you are not supposed to do. You have to just stand like this in front of Krishna Devaraya. But a Devadasi can chew the pan in front of him and speak to him directly with eye contact. The common man is not supposed to have an eye contact with the king, but Devadasi, the prostitute, had that rights to do all that. Thanks, ma'am. My ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ರು ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಿಡೋಣ, ಅವಕಾಶ ಕೊಡೋಣ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ಸ್.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ವಸುವರೇ, ನಾನು ಮುರಳಿ ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು. ನಾನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಸೈಕಲ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೊಡಿತಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸೊ ನಂದು 2 ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಇದೆ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕಾಂಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಕಾಂಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ
ಒಂದಕ್ಕೆ ರಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ ಮುರಳಿ.
ಸರಿ ಓಕೆ. ಸೊ ಈಗ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾನು ಹಂಪಿ ಸೈಕಲ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೊಡೆದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸೊ ನನ್ನ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ ಅಜಿತ್ ಅಂದಗೆರೆ ಅಂತ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರಲ್ ಆಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟ್ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಮ್ಯಾನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ನೇಚರ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಬಯೋಫಿಲಿಕ್ ಡಿಸೈನ್ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ನಮ್ಮಿಬ್ರು ಒಂಥರ, ಅವನು ಕನ್ನಡ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ. ನಮ್ಮಿಬ್ರಿಗೂ ಬೇಸರ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಕನ್ನಡದವರು ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಭಾಷೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಎರೇಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಶಿಲ್ಪಕಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಎರೇಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂತ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋವಾಗ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ವೇರ್ ಯು ಫಿಟ್ ಇನ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಸ್ಟೋರೀಸ್, ಲೈಕ್ ಹೌ ಡು ವಿ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಶೇಪಿಂಗ್ ಅವರ್ ಸ್ಪೇಸಸ್. ಒಂಥರ ವಾಟ್ ಯು ಥಿಂಕ್ ಅಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್, ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ತಲ್ಲ ಈ ಆರ್ಕಿಟೆಕ್ಚರು ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ ಪರಿಪೂರ್ಣ ನಾವು ಅಳ್ಸ್ಕೊಂತ ಇರೋ ಒಂದು ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ
it's more you're coming from a different perspective, like the history when you are erasing, so the lifestyle is going like almost you are erasing the past history and going with something else. See, for me, erasing something means revealing something new. Right? So I'm not so much fascinated person like the old was gold. No, I don't believe in it at all. So something was there, for whatever the reason, society has decided to change. Whether it's right or wrong, we don't know. So the time has to tell that. But society has always right to change and move on. Okay? So there was one picture, we have moved on, and there is a new picture. That's all. So whether that was better, this is better, this only people for academics background to do that one. For me, everything looks beautiful when it is done by society. So whatever, it is irrespective of the time and space.
Congratulations both to Vasu and Maithreyi. I'll be shortly joining that minority group of people who have read both Kannada and English version. I'm really curious to read this translated version of this thing. I have read all the books of Vasu. I'm yet to read Maithreyi's works. But in one of your interviews, Maithreyi, this question is for you. I remember you saying that, translation helped you as a training wheel. So as a translator myself, and I nurse ambitions of writing my own stuff as well. So from the horse's mouth, I would like to know a little more on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think translation, since you are a translator yourself and you are currently working on something, you should know it's very creative work. And I started off as a translator before writing my own fiction, and I found it to be very handy. It was like training. It was my practice into getting into, because with translation, you're providing words to somebody's story where the plot is given to you, the context is given to you. And the next step from there is to just generate the plot because you're translating your thoughts into words. It's as simple as that. And I've been warned by a few people saying don't do too much translation because you lose your voice because you're constantly lending your voice to other works. But that is not how it is. I actually felt that it was great exercise. In translation, you're translating somebody's words. When you start writing, you're translating your own thoughts. So that is the next step, and that's how it's helped me. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. So there are copies of the book Tejo Tungabhadra outside, both in Kannada and English.
Not only that, even many of my books which have been translated to Telugu, Tamil, Marathi, Spanish, all are there. So you can choose whichever the language which suits to you. So all books I kept it outside for the sale.
Perfect opportunity, I think. Grab Vasudhendra and get your book signed afterwards. What an opportunity. Thank you so much. I'm not going to hold everybody up. I just have to say this was a wonderful session. Lovely questions. Devi, you led us through this conversation so well. Maithreyi, really to the point about translation, but also about the particular experience with this book. And Vasudhendra, what can I say? You were fantastic. And you just take us along your journey with this book so wonderfully. And I have 100 questions about all the gender issues and, so many things. But that's for private conversations, I guess, because we have to close this session. Thank you so very much for being here.
So I would like to, before forgetting, thanks to BIG for organizing this event.
Thank you very much.